Because I think that's what we have to do, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Oh, let me get this guy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Tim Kubrick with Labor Relations. Really appreciate you all being here and looking forward to working with you. I know we have done a little bit so far, but yeah, I really am excited to be in this role and working with all of you. So we'll get started on this end with some introductions.
I think you all know me. How are you? Good morning. Assistant Chief Weiner.
Mark Mitchell, HR Director.
Heather Frederick, actually, Chief Financial Officer.
All right.
Kevin O'Sullivan, the PBA rep.
Katie Mendoza, PBA attorney.
Officer Alexander Lopez, PBA rep.
Michael Lynch, PBA rep.
All right, great. Thanks again for being here. Just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded. All right, so ultimately today is to open our reopener session, first session here, and we will get into that, and I'll let you all start with what you want to bring forward.
Okay, so I guess I can just go through the main proposal packet. I know we wanted to talk about the sick leave stuff as well. So we chose 17, 18, and 20, so work week, leave, and wages. So for 17.1, and we actually did a survey among the membership, so this is based on some of the feedback that we got back from them. So 17.1, subsection C, we wanted to increase the reoccurring maximum for comp time, so from 24 to 40, just to give them a full work week, and I think that's, most places I have at least 40 hours, so that was one of the asks from our membership. And then I think the next change is 17.11. So outside detail rates from $35 to $40 per hour. And then if you see, once we get to Article 20, we increased the rate for non-contract days to $40 as well in our proposals. And then for 17.12, this is the, I think, new section that we added during this last round of bargaining. So I'll just read it. If an outside detail or extra duty work is canceled and the officer is notified of the cancellation less than 1 hour prior to the scheduled start time of the work, the officer shall inform his or her immediate supervisor of the situation. Upon confirmation of the cancellation and lack of appropriate notice, the officer shall be entitled to compensation for the scheduled length of time for said outside detail or extra duty work. And then in the blue here, I meant to put that under 17.15, so we can move that down. That's just regarding the study committee. And then I just updated in red, that can stay where it is. This provision became enforceable on November 2nd, 2021. That was the date of PBA ratification, and sunsets on December 31st, 2022. 17.13, I just corrected it. It was THRU, so I just wrote it out. And 17.15 discusses that joint study committee. So I just wanted to make sure that it was, there were several meetings on it. So I just put that they should meet for the first session by March 15th, and we'll hold at least 3 sessions regarding its proposals. And I think you guys have already been discussing when to meet, so that's pretty much it for Article 17. And then Article 18 leaves, and if you want to discuss anything, just let me know, but I know that you guys probably have to talk about
Sure.
the financials. So Article 18, leaves of absence. So the next change we see is on page 7. And this also addresses one of the things in the latest sick leave policy that we got. So we put that, and I added domestic partner there, and I think it's in other sections, so I just added it there as well. And then an employee that uses sick leave to miss an entire scheduled work calendar day shall not work any extracurricular school function, lease, or mutual aid details until the next calendar day. And that's what you all proposed, but they wanted it to be basically only if it was for your own sickness that you can't work. So unless that sick leave was used to care for an individual other than the employee, because if you're staying home for your child or something like that, we thought you should be able to go to a later detail in the day. And then 8, that's just a clarification. That's still the same substance, so sure. Oh, and yeah, and Alex said that we want to address too, I guess you can work later if it's just for like a routine doctor's appointment. If, you know, like a checkup or something like that.
Or dentist appointment, you had a dentist appointment, you took sick time, and you should still be able to work, you know,
The rest of your shift.
Got it.
Understood.
So just with regard to that, then you guys are good with providing documentation to those circumstances, right?
Yeah, and I think the contract says that if requested, they
Yeah.
should provide a doctor's note.
you want automatic documentation every
I
single
think
time?
we haven't gotten to that point, I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
saying you guys are open to that, if you're asking for this. Okay.
Yeah, just proof of your
We're not going to
doctor's.
be able to get sick, documentation for a child being sick, other than you're staying home and watching. But if you need it for your own personal use to go to a dentist or whatever, yes, we agree with that.
We can get into the details, I think,
Right.
later on. Thank you.
And then, let's see. So military leave, that also goes along with the policy, so I thought we could talk more about this, and I think Officer Lynch, you know, spoke to the members about this. So temporary military leave, this is what it says now, I just highlighted it so that we could talk about it. So for temporary military service, it says that you get paid not to exceed 240 working hours. So I think that is 30 days. And then if you go to the next section on unpaid leave for military leave, I changed it to, I think that's what you all put, first 30 days. And I don't, so they're really the same because it's 30 and 30. So I don't know why this part is under unpaid, if that was unpaid before. But I never saw board policy 3.8. I don't think I have that. So I thought we could just include military service in one section. Because 240 is the same as 30 days, and for regular military service, that's 30 days is, I think, what you all put in this, in the leave policy, so. And then bereavement leave, we got, again, requests to increase it if you have to travel out of state, so we proposed the 5 days if you have to, if you're required to travel out of state for bereavement. And then 18.6 is, we've been hearing a lot about this because they want to, you know, get the same COVID policy as the teachers. So we proposed the paid administrative sick leave days for COVID infection. And it says that if you suffer from COVID-19 infection, you'll be provided paid admin sick leave days to recover, provided that you immediately notify your supervisor upon receipt of a positive test result. And then you provide either a doctor's note or quarantine note. And they're not capped, however, after the initial 5 days of quarantine, you all can ask for another doctor's note or quarantine order. So that's it for leave. And then salary plan. So I think that last sentence for 20.1 is confusing because, you know, if there is a change in the career ladder benefit, that's wages, so you do, you know, we do bargain over it, so I took that out. 20.2, I made the heading there in caps like everything else. 20.3, the canine officers, they were asking if their time worked at home is being, you know, currently included in their overtime calculation, so I think it's required to be, so I put that in there for clarification. And then 20.4 is what I was referencing earlier, non-contract day compensation, so we raised that to $40 per hour as well. And 20.5, you know, every year, every time the officers they want a step plan, they have it in Miami-Dade, so they always bring that up. We did propose the 5% increase in wages. We wanted to increase the range as well. But I wanted to talk about that more because we don't want a compression issue or anything like that. And then we put in a Me Too clause as well for wage increases. And then D, this is something Mr. Kubrick brought up, which we're, appreciative for. So we wanted to propose that the officers who did not receive the $1,000 first responder pandemic pay from the state, who have been, working primarily as a law enforcement officer to get that money, because some of them just had that weekend gap where they left their former agency and came here, and then they, were prohibited from getting that state money. So, and then 20.12, this is, we've gotten a lot of phone calls about the pay gap, so I'm sure Heather can speak to that more. But we wanted to discuss that, and, if we can't delay it, I think that's what everybody wants, to delay it, but maybe we can reconfigure the way that the paychecks are distributed somehow to relieve some of that burden. I don't know, so we wanted to speak with you all about the pay gap.
Okay. All right. Do you have any questions? Okay. We will obviously be coming back to the table with our responses to these.
Okay.
But we will need a little time to review what we have here, and we'll get back to you on our next meeting.
Okay, great.
All right. So for our side, what we are bringing out, obviously Article 20, we're waiting for information from the state so that we could fully evaluate our financial plan for the upcoming school year before we're really able to bring anything to the table. So once this information is available, Heather will be doing a presentation to the group so that we can, show you where we're at, all right?
Okay.
As far as our next item, this is the only other item we're bringing out, is 20.10, Sergeant Special Duty Assignment. What we are requesting is to strike this from the agreement and to treat this as any other assignment under 20.3.
Okay. I don't think we're open to striking it completely, but maybe we can pick up where we left off at the last session, because it's not like any other assignment. They're first-level supervisors, so we do want some kind of process left in place. And as you know, there's the unfair labor practice going on, and we do believe that detective supervisors do the same thing as sergeants, and we do want some kind of a process for selecting those first-level supervisors. So I don't know, maybe we can go back to talking about decreasing
Sure.
the number of years required or things like that, so.
And I think that's where we're mostly hung up,
Okay.
is that it really does limit the number of employees who are able to take advantage of this and be assigned that. So that was the information that I received. So we can always come back and discuss that further.
Okay.
Anything else to add on that? Okay.
And Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about the pay gap? Because I think that there was a lot of confusion regarding the reasoning behind it and, when the fiscal year started. And a lot of officers were saying, well, we did start on a weekend before, and I haven't been here that long, so I don't remember or know. So,
Right, I would have to go back to the email that I sent that explained it in the past. So you would have to, school police would have to start on January 1st. July 1st, and if I go look at July 1st, that is a non-work day. The district is closed on that day. And
on July 1st?
On July 1st. Let me just make sure, let me check my calendar. Right, July 1st is a Friday, so the district is closed that day. Even if for some reason we were to add that as an actual workday, even though the district is closed, all it would do is delay the pay gap for 1 year, and it would be there next year. It's not going to go away. Every single bargaining group, any employee group that's less than 260 days or less than year-round is going to have a pay gap. And that pay gap is going to happen every 10 to 12 years. And it's the way the calendar works, because if you take the 26 pays, it doesn't add up, times 14 days, it doesn't add up to 365 days a year, plus taking into consideration leap year. It is strictly just based on the numbers and how it works out as to why every group is going to have a pay gap. The reason why the teachers seems like it was somewhat delayed is because their calendar, the start date of school, moved up we were starting pretty late in the year, and so it's moved up over several years. And the result of moving up the start of school helped to delay their pay gap slightly. So every
What
group.
would the start date be for them?
For the schools?
No, for the teachers. So like ours is July 1st. What would theirs be?
Oh, theirs is not going to be, it depends each year based on when school starts. And then they usually start, I want to say, 5 days before students come back. That delays, somewhat. Last year, there was 1 year that was unique just because we started school, then we had the outbreak where we then had to, close schools down again in order, we actually didn't bring the students back, and then we delayed when students were going to start. But that wasn't a result of the pay gap or anything. That was just a result of what we were dealing with, COVID at the time. And the choice of trying to push back the start of school as late as possible so that we would be able to get students to be able to come back. But every bargaining group is going to have a pay gap, like I said, and it just depends on, where you fall in the calendar. And it's going to be if we were to start school at the same time every single year, it would be every 10 to 12 years. There's going to be a pay gap. The reason why it fluctuates a little bit, like I said, is based on how we move up the start of school. So adding the first as a workday isn't going to do anything because all it's going to do is delay it 1 year. And so you're going to have it. And the district is closed that day.
Is there any way we could, deviate from the 26 paycheck system just for the pay gap year?
The way we used to do it in the past, prior to implementing PeopleSoft, was that we paid out all of the leave, or all of the pay, all the deferred pay in June. And so you would get a lump sum, you would get, multiple checks that represented what payments you were going to receive over those summer months. And so when we went to PeopleSoft, we went to getting, a paycheck every 2 weeks, but that is going to result in a pay gap. Getting it paid out in the past, like we did, resulted in the same, potential of having a pay gap. It's just you received all the money up front in June. So we can go back to the way that we did it in the past prior to PeopleSoft, whereas we paid out all of that money in June. I mean, that's the only other option, because paying every 2 weeks, because that's the only, that is how we have PeopleSoft configured right now. That's the only way there is going to be a pay gap, just because of the way that it works, that 26 pays times 14 days does not add up to 365 days.
Before PeopleSoft, if for the old timers over there would recall, we got paid on the 1st and the 15th. We used to get paid
Well, the
twice a
15th and the
month.
last day of the month, and then that caused issues with overtime, because then overtime was delayed, if you recall. So you couldn't then be paid real time based on your overtime.
Well, we don't get paid real time anyway.
Yeah, I know, but also for the other groups, it was an issue as well. We could look at going back to the 15th and the last day of the month. That would be a significant change in our business process, and it would cost a significant amount of money to rewrite all of our payroll rules in order to implement that.
I don't think you guys even want that, right?
I was just, there was just another option that was out there years ago. I just wanted to.
Right,
bring it up.
that was part of PeopleSoft as well. It was the 15th, and part of when we were in CHIPS. That was the old system, but
That would correct any pay gap, right? If it was done that way?
well, it also depends on the start and end date, but we would also have to pay out everybody in June, because it would still there would be other groups that would still have a pay gap.
You have a bigger gap.
So,
Mark, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kubrick. I was just offering, because, I'm one of the old timers from back when, and every 10, 12 years, seems like this, just my recollection, I don't know if you guys recall as well, but, it does happen, as Ms. Frederick said, every 10 to 12 years, so you kind of think back, all the bargaining groups, it seems like it became last time more of a communication effort, like, this is coming and get prepared and so forth. We're certainly open to exploring any opportunities to mitigate it, but I think it is, as Ms. Frederick said, it's something, because we spread out pay over the summer months and so forth, we encounter this every 10, 12 years. So it becomes a communication effort, and how to make sure everyone's prepared and well-informed and that type of thing. And I agree. I was here a few years before we implemented PeopleSoft, back in 2007 or whatever it was. And yeah, you had that, people kind of budgeted over the summer. You got all your checks at the end of June. Then you had to kind of spread them out. And I remember talking to people and say, yeah, well, I kind of set up different accounts for my checks. Or a lot of people had different ways to deal with that, because it was a couple-month gap back then. Now it's a pay period. So it seems like when the day's done, when we're done talking and so forth, maybe you transition to a place where we're working together to kind of make sure all our employees and your membership is informed to prepare for it. And things, ways to handle that is, hey, You know, you can invite banks in and have a day where you come in and set up kind of a like savings account to make sure you're spreading your money over that period of time. I remember those ideas came, I remember it was SEIU, I think, brought up that idea of having the banks come in 10, 12 years ago to make sure their membership was, you know, well-informed and doing what they needed to do to make sure they had money for the family over the summer. So I'm just throwing those out to kind of spur all our memories on what happened, and I hope that's helpful. Thank you, Mr.
And we
Cooper.
did provide communication, and in that communication, we did relay the amount that they would set aside each pay period in order to make up for that pay gap.
Well,
during-
it seems to be more of an issue with the newer people, and they don't seem to understand well, their argument is that I haven't been here 10 to 12 years, so why is this pay gap affecting me? This is their train of thought.
Sure.
And no matter how much I tried to explain it, I don't know
hard.
if it's maybe I'm not explaining it right, but one of the members did look into that pay schedule that you sent, and they sent me the breakdown. You remember the breakdown? And it is missing one check from the breakdown that they wrote up, and I was like,
Well,
now, it might be missing an actual physical paycheck, but I think the full amount of annual salary is still there, but
I have 26 pays.
the one that, remember that email I sent you?
Yeah, I don't have it with me, but they aren't losing any money.
No, they're not losing any money. It's the annual salary divided by 26 pays, and it just all is based on just how the calendar falls. And so it's now is the time for the pay gap. And so we do have a calendar where we look out for multiple years, but it can't be relied upon because it also is dependent on the start of school for most other bargaining groups. And so our goal is communication, which is what we did with the police officers. We also, you know, made sure that all of you were informed as well. You're part of the payroll committee. I know there is a representative. I'm not sure which one of you is on the payroll committee. So that is discussed every single year, what the pay calendar is going to look like, whether there's going to be a pay gap.
I sat in on a couple of those meetings, but I had no idea what they were talking about when they said pay gap. I'm new to this too, so I have no idea, and they just kept asking, is there a pay gap this year? Is there a pay gap? And I didn't even know what they were talking about. I figured it didn't include us. So I think, is there any time that this is going to be any sooner than every 10 to 12 years?
I can go back and look at PBA to see when.
No, I don't mean had in the past. I mean, is there somewhere, if we start changing the school dates around at all, is it going to change?
I have to look at PBA to see if
Frequency?
PBA is impacted by a change in the start of school. I know the other groups are because they're dependent on starting based on aligning with the student start day. School police calendar is a little bit different, that you are not aligned with the first day that students come back, so yours is a little more unique. So I would just have to go back and look to see if yours would be any more than 10 to 12 years if we were to change, you know, based on the start of the school calendar.
And I'm just throwing it out there, not saying it's going to happen, but there's been talk on them before on going to school for 4 10-hour days and stuff like that. Would that have any effect on pay gaps?
That wouldn't have any effect on the pay gaps. It would purely be the start of school, and like I said, PBA is more unique than other groups that are not dependent on the day students start. Because most others, well, if students start on one day, they're starting 2 days before. Your calendar is not based on the start date of students. So that's why their pay gap can change based on when we choose students to come back to start school, because it's not the same day every year, and it can fluctuate 1 to 2 weeks, which is why it's impacted other groups where it's either pushed up, where they've had a pay gap quicker than what we thought they would have, and others where it's delayed it based on the start of school. But I just have to go back and check PBA because yours is not aligned with the student start date, so it might be more that it is going to just align with the 10 to 12 years.
I have a quick question. Is there any union in this district that's exempt from that Fridays, the district being closed during the summers?
Not that I am,
So
not that
the
I'm
whole
aware of.
district technically is closed, and everybody's off Fridays during the summer?
Yes.
Correct.
Right. I just wanted to clarify that, because that's been an issue with this, with our calendar
We always get a lot of questions about when their calendar's gonna come out and, if there's any changes and things like that. So I think I put something in there about that too, because I don't know when that does come out. But if there are changes, I'm sure we would like to discuss them.
And if I may, back, regarding the pay gaps, the three, if I'm not mistaken, the three other bargaining units are SEIU, ASOP, and CTA. Are they going to be affected by it this current year, to your knowledge?
Yes, there are other groups that are impacted by the pay gap this year.
Now, I believe, I just want to see, if the CTA, was that supposed to be, were they supposed to be affected this year, but they kicked the can down the road for a little bit?
No.
No?
No,
Well,
like I said,
because their start date is different, right?
right, and theirs is only impacted by the start date of schools.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's hard to wrap your mind around, but the bottom line is no one's missing any
Right.
money.
Yes, yeah, correct.
And, okay.
I think what it was is that we were trying to see if there were a way to be able to delay it, because the rumor mill out there is that there other unions are not going to be affected this year, but it was pushed off for another year or so. That is what's,
Or they would come up with a solution.
yeah.
Right, and
I think that-
that, right, and that's not accurate. There are other groups, and it's not like it's going to be in some instances, it's not the whole group, it's just certain members within that group, dependent on when their start date is.
Okay.
And so that's why maybe they're not seeing that it's the whole union group that's being impacted.
Right, okay. That makes sense.
It's a
Thank you.
subset of them.
Okay.
And I do agree that it is complicated. We're trying our best in the communication that we provide to explain it, but I do understand that it is difficult to understand, but know that every single bargaining group is going to be impacted by a pay gap.
It's hard to explain to a young guy making $43,000 a year to save 5% of his paycheck every 2 weeks. If he was able to do that, he'd be putting it in a 401 or 457 or 403 or one of those instead. So it's a little difficult when you're getting that type of paycheck to tell them to save 5%. I think that's what they're having a hard time wrapping their hands around.
Understand.
If I may just follow up, this is, obviously it's taped, so it's good information for our employees. So obviously we've done a lot of hiring. So by an officer being here a reasonably short time, obviously, and they come in and they're like advised that they're gonna, in their eyes miss a paycheck, right? Could you explain why it's done to like a new hire who's here versus like someone like you or me or Alex who have been here for an extended period of time, who have a better working knowledge of what you're speaking about? I don't know if I made that clear.
No, I'm not exactly sure what your question is, but the pay cycle is the same for everybody. So when a person comes in, they're put on the same pay cycle as everybody else in that group. Because we have people that are paid different amounts based on, like I said, their start date within the district. And so any officer is going to come in and they're going to be put in the same pay cycle as every other officer. So it's going to be their annual pay divided by 26.
But all PBA unit members are going to experience the pay gap no matter their start date.
Correct.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Their reasoning, which I guess I can understand, is again, if argument's sake, if it happens every 10 or 12 years, you can have the understanding that it's going to happen to individuals who have that amount of time employed here, right? Where people who have not been here as long, and their statement to us is, why am I being affected? I'm sorry. I've only been here a short time. So that's the hard part for them to wrap their hands around, is that understanding.
I think the confusion lies in one of the letters, because it said something about like a start date or something like that, but it's affecting, just so, if they watch this, it's affecting all PBA unit members regardless of the start date, and no one's losing money.
Right, correct, yeah.
They just happen to be the lucky ones here in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was politely saying, is just
Yeah.
the luck of the draw, unfortunately, yeah.
Correct. But then they're going to have a long time, hopefully, before they have the next
For
one.
the next one,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And just wanted to clarify, in case somebody's listening to this too. So if you start, because we start on June 1st, if you start on June 7th as a new employee, would you have that gap this year?
Right, they're going to have the same pay gap as every single other
They may get one paycheck, have a
officer.
gap,
If
and then
they-
another
If
paycheck.
they start in July, they won't have the pay gap because they already missed it. So anytime after.
That's kind of what I'm saying. So with the date of starting before where you're going to have the pay gap is basically May 31st.
I would have to go back and verify what that exact date
It would
would
have to
be.
be after the actual first check is printed in July. And then they would have avoided that pay gap
The
themselves.
gap missing is the gap is June 18th through July 1st, and then you're supposed to get that check on July 8th. That's the missing.
So anybody hired after July 8th wouldn't even be affected by it.
Okay.
Would that assumption be correct? Anybody hired after July 8th wouldn't be affected by that gap?
I would prefer to go back and actually get you the exact date.
Okay.
We'll
Or
get
it
that
just would be
information.
the date after that last pay period, that's the gap, right? The end.
But I just want to verify, because it is very complicated, I want to make sure that I'm giving you the correct date, so I'd rather just go back to my payroll department, have them verify it before I give it to you.
We won't hold you to it.
We understand.
Okay. And the military thing, yeah, like, because it seemed 30 days for both, so I don't know if we want to, and do you mind providing me that 3.80 language?
Yes.
Reference that, okay.
And then I had a military guy say that he understood everything that was on there, maybe it'd be a little bit more beneficial for the military leave also, is if they explain it a little better to these guys and tell them how much money they're gonna owe when they get back. Because I guess after a certain point, and Chief, correct me on this stuff, because I know you do the military too still. After a certain amount of time, you're getting paid, then you have to pay back the monies that you're overpaid between the difference.
So that only happens for the unionized, because you're working less than the 12 months.
I can't hear you, sir.
It only affects those that are working less than 12 months, so in my case, it wasn't a factor.
Okay, but you understand what the
I do.
system is. That's kind of what I'm asking. I didn't do the reserve, so I'm not so familiar. And the gentleman that I spoke to, the officer I spoke to, said that he understood it, but it was just he didn't know how much. When he got back, he was sent a bill, basically, and said, you owe, I don't know, $3,000. And it's, for a guy coming back and now owing $3,000, it's like, all of a sudden when I come back, maybe it spelled out a little bit more clearly what these guys is all I'm basically asking.
Yeah, I think what we might be able to do, we'll look into it, is to provide them with an estimation, right?
That's all, that's what he said.
Yeah,
to
this
an
way they
estimate
can-
On how much. not
This way they
exact,
can
just
include that
estimate.
in their financial planning. Yeah.
And do they continue to accrue leave when they're on military leave?
If they're using paid military leave, they're accumulating. Once they're off paid status, they don't accumulate time anymore, is my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay. Maybe we could just put that in here. Okay, I think that was our main concern, just with the leave policy and that one section about when you can work, if you can work that same day. So if you care for another person, or if you just are missing for a routine doctor's appointment, we want you to be able to work that same day for like a detail or anything like that. And then just the military leave, if we can, and I wanted to look at that policy 3.80, so.
Yep, I will get that to you.
Okay, great. And then, so I think that's all of our, I think we were okay with everything else, is that right?
Yes.
You can look at this for this.
Mark?
Yeah, I was just asking Mr. Kubrick if I could make a general statement, because we certainly understand your requests on the military leave and annual leave type of thing, but I just wanted to say, we both want to kind of wrestle with together what language exists in policy versus what language exists in bargaining agreements, because we have this much policy language out there, so if every union agreement included all that policy language. So we'll just want to talk about that with you.
Okay.
As we look at these things going forward, because we hear you, though, understand your position.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
CBA always trumps, but that's why I was trying to
Right.
add some of it into the contract.
Understood.
Yeah, but I can write some of this out too and email it to you if
Okay.
that's helpful.
And 90% if it's fat, the other stuff that really means something to anybody is what they're having a problem with.
Thank you.
Understood. Anything else?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about with the military and the.
Okay.
I think, are you guys okay, and I just am talking to them, you are okay with the procedures for requesting sick leave through the lieutenant? Maybe you can explain that a little bit.
What's the question?
If you, I don't know if you have this in front of you, but one of the changes was leave requests. I think one of the proposals from the district was to go straight through the lieutenant.
That's right.
So if you could just explain the
Yeah,
reasoning.
sure, I could tell you why. So the lieutenants are the ones that are responsible to make sure we have adequate coverage across the sectors and zones. So that's the level of the organization that has the visibility to be able to make those decisions, where sector supervisors don't have that.
So, okay, so sergeants don't grant leave?
They weigh in on the ultimate approval, but they're not the decision maker.
Wouldn't it be more continuity in that, though, if we just stick to the same thing straight through?
I think there was a concern with just why they're breaking the chain of command.
That's not breaking the chain of command if that's the process that we put in place.
The only thing I'd like to see done is that I'd like to see a clause also added that if you don't hear a response, if you don't get a response, assume that you got it, because a lot of times,
My supervisor.
we're not getting responses from these lieutenants that we took today.
Yeah.
For instance, today, the three of us requested that we had to be at PBA bargaining, and we needed coverage. Did you receive a response, Kevin?
No, well, I know, no, my partner was.
No, I didn't. Did you get a response from the lieutenant?
You submitted
I
it,
did get a response from my supervisor, my immediate supervisor, which was the
you
sergeant.
submitted a TDE
which is,
for this
again-
time?
Again, the continuity.
No, it goes through an email to the supervisor, I do it, and to Lieutenant Cadio for their
I
information.
did the same
That's-
thing.
That's what we've been doing.
I'm just saying that when I put in for a comp day a couple weeks ago, I never got a response.
You did a TDE on that?
On a comp day, no, we don't do a TDEs on comp days, we do a comp request.
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I did get a response from my immediate supervisor, but we spoke personally on that after I sent the email to Lieutenant Cordio, who's very busy, we understand that in the morning too, but that's going back to, again, the continuity, us dealing directly with our supervisor, who then call, and make sure that everything is in place, because most of the time, those are the ones that are going to be covering our zones, like my supervisor's there right now at my school.
Yeah, I understand, I'll look into it for you.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
I'll look into it for you.
Thank you.
So I think we would like that section to stay as sergeant, and maybe they can include the lieutenant, but they,
Right, because based on if you adhere strictly to the policy here, the officer would not be insubordinate, not even like telling their first-line supervisor, that, it's kind of disrespectful, and what I think.
And it causes, it could cause confusion.
Confusion, yeah.
So if I could just as if the chief makes a decision that every supervisor in the chain of command is not being disrespected, if the higher level supervisor makes a decision, it's not an automatic disrespect for the subordinate supervisor, it's just guidance.
No, I understand it. What I'm saying is that in chain of command, if they're going to go verbatim by this, the officer doesn't even have to inform his first-line supervisor. He would just go right to the lieutenant. So that's not really good for a chain of command and communication for the first-line supervisor. That's kind of contrary to everything that in a traditional police department that is done. That's what I mean.
I understand what you're saying, I'll take a look at it,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure that the sector supervisor is part of the process.
Yes,
But
just
the
for
decision's going to be made at the zone.
I mean, obviously, I would tell them, but if someone's a literal person, they could just jump right over the first-line supervisor. So just for communication.
We can revisit
Yeah,
this.
we'll revisit it.
And we'll bring that back the next time.
Thank you.
Just another clarification, the requested leave, what does that encompass? What kind of leave?
What are you referencing?
I think that's for all leave requests. That's just the general procedures for all leave requests under the policy.
So sick leave,
Yeah, so sick.
Yes.
Yeah. Comp time as well. That's just under the general procedures, so.
So we're just talking about the report, who they report this to?
Right.
Okay. We'll revisit that. That was part of the impact bargaining, right? The general order? Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, that would,
And we could parse it out in the CBA too, if you want.
that would be, that would probably be an issue too, if an officer wakes up in the, in the middle of the night and he's sick and you're gonna contact your lieutenant, you're probably not gonna get a response.
Can you speak into the mic, because I'm over the mask, I can't really hear
In the
you.
middle of the night, you wake up with a fever, and you know you're not gonna go to work the next morning. 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. You would, by this, you would not notify, in the past, we'd notify dispatch, and they'd put you out, and that's it. There was always somebody 24 hours a day, and the phone's at dispatch. Now it's, according to this new method, you'd have to contact your lieutenant, which most of them aren't gonna have, you know, you're not gonna get a response at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, you know.
Yeah, if you're going out sick, you're going out sick, right? So you're going to notify the dispatch, they're going to make that notification in the morning when the staff comes in to make sure it's covered.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm following you.
Well, that's why I was asking what kind of coverage, what kind of,
What are you
leave
referring to? You're pointing to the paper, but I don't see,
well, the
This
whole
is,
paper
We're
in
gonna
general.
readdress it
That's
anyway,
just the
though.
summary that you all sent to us a while ago.
okay.
Yeah, that was just the response from the impact bargaining. So like I said, I think we can have some additional discussions just to see where we're at with this and try to come together with the next meeting, okay?
Okay, great. All right,
Sounds
thank
good.
you.
All right. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
You too.
All right.
Good seeing everybody.